Buddhism is an ancient tradition with answers to life's biggest questions today. Why do we suffer? How do we relate to other beings? And how do we make the world a happier and more peaceful place for everyone? Our mission at BDK America is to help people understand Buddhism better. Are you looking to start learning about Buddhism or dig deeper? BDK America offers free books and videos for peoples of all ages and levels. Our most popular book, The Teaching of Buddha, is available to read in English and 46 other languages in physical, PDF, and audiobook formats. Visit our website for our latest publications and order your own free copy today.
Hello. For those of you who were with us last week, did your past week go a little better based on a greater sense of gratitude for just being alive? We will be very pleased knowing that was the case. This week, we continue our discussion on the Four Noble Truths. In this show, we shall begin by introducing an important teaching which explains the process by which 1. Suffering arose, and 2. Suffering can be eliminated. The Buddha expounded upon this in an important teaching called the 12 links of the chain of dependent arising, Pratitya Samutpada. This teaching offers a detailed description of the process, which is very much psychological in nature. The process in which suffering arose and can be eliminated is comprised of 12 links. The links themselves are complex in nature and cannot be readily understood in the short time that we have, but allow me to mention them now so that you can at least grasp the general idea. These 12 links are 1. Ignorance, 2. Intentional action, 3. Consciousness, 4. Mind and body, 5. The six senses, 6. The sense contact, 7. Feeling, 8. Craving, 9. Attachment, 10. Becoming, 11. Birth, and 12. Aging, dying, lamentation, grief, pain, sorrow, and despair. These 12 links can be seen as an elaboration of the relationship between the second and the first noble truths. If you recall, greed, hatred, and ignorance were the cause that led to suffering. Here, ignorance is listed first, while greed and hatred are included as dimensions of the intentional action, which represents the second link. These first two links in turn generate the rest of the links ending in suffering, which constitutes the 12th link. So, the 12 links of the chain of dependent arising explains how suffering arises. At the same time, this teaching also serves as an elaboration of the relationship between the fourth and the third noble truths. If we recall, the fourth truth was a path or set of practices for eliminating greed, hatred, and ignorance, which when completed leads to the third truth, which is none other than awakening or nirvana. So, much like dominoes, by eliminating ignorance, suffering is eventually eliminated. What is important to remember here is that each link cannot arise independently, but is dependent on another. They are therefore related to each other on the principle of causality. They are conditioned, relative, and interdependent. So suffering is not absolute, but relative, and therefore can be lessened, if not eliminated, by our practice and effort. Once I was invited to talk about Buddhism on the local TV cable network. After the show, Tom, the host of the program, told me about the loss a few years earlier of his wife of 30 years. Tom appeared to be in his mid-60s and was not a Buddhist. Since I had talked about the truth of suffering in the program, he must have felt even more compelled to confide in me of the impact of his wife's death. Her death had devastated Tom to a point where he could not work for more than a year and suffered mentally and emotionally ever since. Her death was also totally unexpected. But when I asked Tom that surely he must have thought about death, his answer was that he, of course, knew that we all eventually had to die, but he had never really thought about it occurring so soon to him or to his loved ones. Death was in the distant future and hardly ever entered his mind. His exact words were, "We were having too much fun and enjoying life." As I heard Tom talk about his lifestyle and outlook, I had flashes from the Buddha's life when he lived a life of luxury and enjoyed the pleasures of the palace before he departed on his spiritual search. Then, Tom told me that he wished he had known about the teachings of suffering or impermanence. I wish he had too. Even though he would not be able to get his wife back, we agreed as we talked that had he been more aware, he would not have suffered so unduly. Of course, it's extremely sad, and it's natural to be sad, and it's okay to be sad, but he could have avoided extreme, debilitating suffering. I don't intend to be insensitive or overly clinical, but I believe we can look at his situation through the teachings of the 12 links of the chain of dependent arising. He had experienced the 12th link, in which he felt extreme grief and despair. And the source of his extreme suffering ultimately lay with ignorance, the first link. Due to his ignorance concerning the truth of impermanence, his wife's death triggered a chain of psychological reactions. He then experienced a deep and abiding unpleasant feeling. Link 7, followed by a craving or desire to have his wife back with him as before. Link 8. He further became attached, link 9, to his wish of having his wife alive and regaining a life with her. This attachment, of course, clashed with the reality of his wife no longer being around, causing him to experience extreme suffering filled with grief, lamentation, and despair. Links 10 to 12. As ordinary people who lead a lay life, we will surely feel the sadness and grief at the loss of our loved ones. But as ignorance is replaced by wisdom and understanding, we can avoid what Tom had gone through, which was rooted in ignorance about the real nature of life. Wisdom helps us to see things as they really are and not how we wish to see them. Wisdom helps us to cope better in times of personal loss, but also inspires us to live our present life more fully with a greater sense of joy, gratitude, and compassion. Let's look at another example involving a conflict between a parent and her teenage child. I'm sure many of you can identify with this. In this situation, a mother had gotten into yet another heated argument with her teenage daughter over violin practice. The mother is unhappy that her daughter has not practiced as much as she had promised, while the daughter disagrees. Naturally, it's upsetting for both of them. The mother, who is a violinist herself, has always expected her children to play the violin well, thinking of their welfare and the benefits in life. The daughter has complied with her mother's wishes up till now, but now acts out and rebels. In Tom's case, he wished he had dealt with the death of his wife differently. Here as well, the same could be suggested for the mother. In her case, the traditional approach would be to no longer make her daughter continue violin lessons to avoid the conflict and suffering. Yet, I believe in Buddhism, one has a choice, particularly for lay people who don't live in the spiritually focused environment of monasteries. In this respect, the choice is one, to have her daughter quit playing the violin altogether, or two, to press on with practice. Suffering would be eliminated with the first choice, as the source of conflict would be eliminated, but her daughter would lose out on acquiring an important skill that could benefit her life. As for the mother, she chose the latter. She felt that the benefits for her daughter outweighed any arguments and conflicts that were bound to continue. In other words, she decided that suffering with a purpose and awareness was better than giving up on something important just to avoid suffering. The mother also realized that her insistence on her daughter learning violin, no matter how well-intentioned, is still greed, and it's her, the mother's greed. This provides an important lesson for the rest of us. We should not delude ourselves in thinking that when we do things for others, that we are doing it for them, for ultimately we are doing it for ourselves. This will avoid unnecessary suffering when people do not acknowledge our sacrifice, and will also enhance the effectiveness of our efforts. The way the mother applied the teachings of the 12 links of the chain of dependent arising and the Four Noble Truths can in fact serve as an inspiration, a beacon for us, as today's sacred words convey. Following the path of the Four Noble Truths is like entering a dark room with a light in the hand. The darkness will all be cleared away, and the room will be filled with light. Please watch us again next week when we explore the fascinating topic of interreligious dialogue in the increasingly diverse and global world that we live in.
We at Bukkyo Dendo Kyokai pursue peace and happiness for people around the world. We have published the Buddhist teachings into 41 languages and donated our publication to hotels and other facilities in 55 countries. We would like to share the Buddhist teachings with people around the world. That's our mission. Visit our website for more information.